And you are good to go.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this is the Board of Supervisors of Elections meeting, April 15th, 2021 at 7 o'clock. And I'm just calling it to order. Let's do roll call. Eileen Leahy.
Are you going to say present?
Yep, present. Well, just say who you are.
Brianna Guffey, present.
Cliff Myers, present.
All right, and Ashley
Present.
and Susan Eckert's also with us. And I expect we'll also have Regina. Oh, here comes Regina. There she is.
Hi, I'm here.
All right, great. Want to go ahead. First order of business is the approval of the minutes for March 18th, 2021. Did you all get a chance to look at them?
I did. Let me do another. I don't think I had any notes for it.
Cliff, do you have anything that?
Sorry. No, I did not have anything.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't have any either.
Okay. Well, if I've reviewed them already and they appeared fine. So if there's no changes to it, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so moved. So I want to welcome a couple of guests this evening, and we'll be getting to the certificates of candidacy soon. And then when we get there, you're welcome to speak. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, that would be great. Guess we could start with Alderman Arnett.
Yes, Ross Arnett, Ward 8, 15 years on the council and hoping for more.
All right, Mr. Gibson.
Good evening, I'm Scott Gibson. I live in Ward 2. I've lived in the city for a few years now. I last served on the DPW task force where I chaired the finance subcommittee, and I'm looking forward to hopefully joining the city council.
Okay, and our next guest. We have two other guests here.
Good morning, I'm Tony Pratt.
Hi, Tony.
Trying to get certified to run for Ward 4, County Council, City Council.
Great. And I'm sorry, Miss Jackson, I couldn't really see behind the glasses. So I thought you might be Miss Pratt, so.
Oh, that's okay. I'm Michelle Jackson, and I am a supporter for Miss Pratt. Mrs.
All
Pratt,
right.
I'm sorry.
All right, well, welcome.
Thank you.
We had some next order of business is public testimony. After our last meeting in March, we did receive a comment that was submitted. Regina, do I need to read it into the record?
No.
Okay, so there was a comment. Is it available on the website?
Yes.
Okay, so it's available on the website, and it had to do with asking procedures for how to implement a ballot question, and also gave the actual information of what they were interested in terms of what the content of the ballot question. I forwarded it to Ashley Leonard to review before taking any further action. And so she reviewed it and did do the response to Mr. Charles Parker, who had submitted it. Ashley, do you want to make any comment?
No, I don't have any other further comments.
Okay. Basically, I think though that she found that the topic that Mr. Parker wanted to put forth in a ballot question was actually one that needed to be done at the state level and was not one that the city of Annapolis could cover. So that he did receive his reply. Regina, do we get any public testimony or comments for tonight's meeting?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so no other particular public testimony. So moving on to discussion, we have 3 certificates of candidacy, and I'm just going to go through them in the order in which they were received. Susan?
There's actually only 2 on the agenda, so we need
Oh.
to add Alderman Arnett's.
Okay, so can I have a motion to make an addition to the agenda to cover the certificate of candidacy of Alderman Arnett?
I move to consider the candidacy of Alderman Arnett at tonight's meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. So first one is Miss Tony Strong Pratt, who has applied for Alderwoman in Ward 4. Any comments about the certificate of candidacy? I looked at it, looked complete.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything in it. Looked complete to me as well.
Okay,
I don't have any notes as well either.
okay. Actually, since you all are here, let me just back up just a minute. When we get the certificates of candidacy, they are reviewed in the office of the clerk, and then they are forwarded to us to review. In addition to looking for completeness of the form, we also do ask the State Board of Elections to verify that the person applying, the candidate and their treasurer are both registered in the city of Annapolis, and also addresses are checked. So all of that is usually done before it gets to us. And then we look for the minutia to see if there's any, usually it's something hasn't been circled or a date hasn't been included, which doesn't preclude moving forward. But I didn't see anything on this one. So can I have a motion to accept the certificate of candidacy of Ms. Tony Strong Pratt?
Motion to accept the certificate of candidacy.
Second?
Sorry, moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
The next one is for Alderman Ward 2, Mr. Scott Gibson. If you see anything, or just check that application. Okay,
Don't believe I had anything. Let me double check here. Yep, nope.
okay, so can I have a motion?
Motion to accept the certificate of candidacy for Scott Gibson.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so moved. Congratulations. And then the third one is for Alderman Ward 8, Alderman Ross Arnett.
Yeah, likewise, it looked complete to me. I didn't see anything.
Looks good to me. Okay, motion.
I move to accept the candidacy of Alderman Ross Arnett.
Okay,
Second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, congratulations, Alderman Arnett. So,
Thank you.
so
And
Susan,
congratulations to my fellow running people.
right, it's been kind of slow, so we were pretty excited to start
Yeah.
seeing 3. I mean, it's like, now Susan, did they get the candidate handbook? Or
They
will they
will
be
get
getting that?
I'll be mailing out a packet tomorrow along with email for a link to provide their candidate photo and bio and information that we'll post on the city website. So just be looking for that in the next day or so.
Okay. One of the initiatives we took this past year was to put together a candidate handbook to give you the information both for the candidate and for the treasurer, to hopefully make the process a little, not a little clearer in terms of at least finding it and maybe explaining it. So you'll be getting that. Susan Eckert is the election associate that we have, who is working part-time in the city clerk's office. And so she's a great resource for you all too. So
I
Ms.
think
Pratt?
Tony had a question. Yeah.
Ms.
I
Pratt?
do. I got my copy of my the certification I filed, but I need the copy with the notarization on it.
I saw your request, Tony, and the first thing when I get in, I will scan it and email that one to you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Do any of the candidates or Ms. Jackson have any questions for us? No. Well, welcome aboard for the ride.
Thank you. Now on off to the planning commission.
All right. Well, I was going to say you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave if you
Yeah,
like.
we'll be more fun, I guarantee it.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. All right, next order of business is an election update.
Excuse me, real quick. I
Sure.
just want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to witness such an eventful time. And
Oh, well,
I'm really excited for all the candidates.
good.
So again, thank you and have a good meeting and a good evening.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, election update. Ashley, I'm going to throw it to you as far as the MOU.
Okay, so we're getting close. We finally got feedback from them. We have a few issues that we need to address related to the emergency judges on the day of the emergency teams. There's still a little bit of confusion in the MOU about that. We have to decide the issue of mail-in ballots and whether we're going to put any of that, in the MOU. And then we're still trying to sort out the exhibits. So I'm going to send a follow-up email with a lot of comments. Elaine and I talked at length today, and I will copy you guys. And then we also have a meeting scheduled for Monday with the county board to hopefully resolve most of the issues outstanding. And then, of course, the other issue is the related budget, but that doesn't stop us from signing that MOU.
And most of the things that we had looked at did have to do with the emergency judges. There was just some inconsistency in terms of how they were referred to and how much they were going to cost and that sort of thing. So that kind of was a thread. Another thing was getting the exhibits because we didn't have them. And also some information about making sure who's going to be doing the mailings, whether they be the mailings that we've done in the past.
Oh yeah, that's right. The
additional
postcards,
ones.
yes.
They also didn't include drop boxes as part of, or they didn't identify it as equipment. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to clarify that that was going to be in there.
Which
And-
might end up on one of the exhibits.
Okay.
But we'll see. But yes, I have a whole running list of things, and hopefully between an email tomorrow and the meeting on Monday, we can get most of this ironed out. But the good news is we finally heard back from them and their attorney. So we're actually making progress on that front.
Right. And from a legal standpoint, you felt that it was fine.
Yeah, legally, it's fine. We're just working out sort of more procedural, operational issues at this point.
Okay. One thing to add to the list that came up in my head later, they had said, I guess they had said that they would actually give us, or they had used COVID equipment that was going to be expiring before the next election. So I don't know if it has to be detailed in there, if maybe it's on.
I think Exhibit D which is the voting infrastructure, usually lists all that stuff. So I'll add that as a note.
Okay. Regina, do you have anything you want to add as far as the mechanics of this before we get into actually making some other decisions?
No, you did a great job explaining. No,
Okay.
I have nothing to
All right.
add.
So I think some of this had to do just with the changes that when this was submitted back in July, it didn't include some of the things we need to include now. So it's really updating it. So just as a little, history or just looking back, before COVID started, we had actually started thinking about moving to a mail-in, at that time, a mail-in voting system similar to what was in Rockville, which was they sent out ballots to all of their registered voters. Now, they don't have a primary, they just have a general election. They had a good experience with it. We'd been in touch with them. They had worked with the State Board of of elections with that. I know I had talked with Joe Torre at the time, and he said it was a positive experience, and they had kind of assisted in just a consulting basis. In December, when we were looking at the different options, the board, this board opted to look into sending absentee ballot applications out to all registered voters. This is similar to what was done in the 2020 presidential election, in the general election. In the 2020 presidential election at the state level for the primary, they did the other option. They did the mail-in ballot. In subsequent talks with the state board up in Anne Arundel County, we had kind of gotten the impression that going forward with the absentee ballot, sending it out to all registered voters was an option and was actually in keeping what the State Board of Elections terms vote by mail. So my understanding is at the state level, vote by mail means you send out a absentee ballot application to all registered voters. If they want one, they send it back. It's verified, then they get the ballot later. In recent talks with the Anne Arundel County State Board of Elections, it was noted that because our primary and general elections are so close together, they did not know, not only was it a question of moving the number of absentee ballots through, but also going from the primary, the results of the primary, which can't be made official until after the canvass, which is a week later. Then you're talking about getting the names on the ballot, getting getting the ballot done and getting the ballot printed and getting it out. They've done it before in terms of the timing, but I think their concern is the potential to have increase in terms of numbers. So, and correct me if you had a different impression, Ashley and Regina, but I kind of got the impression they're kind of waving us off of that. And that leaves us with either going with that. I mean, they wave us off, but then they say, well, whatever you want, we'll work it out. So that's something. But I think to summarize, which I had sent you all out kind of a summary before, we kind of need to just look at how many polling places we want. Do we want to change how we are conducting business in terms of absentee ballots and mail-in ballots, and then of course, drop boxes? They're really three different issues. And I'd like to, if it's all right with you all, unless you want to do it differently, is just take each one separately and start with how many polling places do we think we want or need? Does that work for everybody if we just break it down into the three sections?
That's fine.
Okay. So this kind of overlaps a bit with in terms of the polling locations that Susan's been working on. We've been in discussions about moving it from 16 to 18, in large part because we want to provide consistency to the voters and accessibility. And historically, in each ward, there's one location that's pretty much always there, always available, what people are used to, where they're used to voting. The second location in several wards changes frequently, changes with every election, which causes, some confusion, can, cause voters to be somewhat disenfranchised. And then having to, what has happened even in 2017 was they go to where they thought they were supposed to vote and there's not voting there that year. So they have to find out where the voting is. Now, of course, we're going to do outreach. We're going to try to get that information out to people. We can put signs up at all these places. But again, we want to make voting accessible, constant. And we want people to feel comfortable where they're voting in terms of knowing where to go. So having said all that, what are your all thoughts about how many? And we'll start with that, 16 or 18. I think it's one or the other. It can't be a mix.
16 or 8, you mean?
16 or 8, yeah.
Or 8.
Actually,
I said, whoa, you're
Yeah.
ready
I'm
too.
sorry. Theoretically, to be fair, we had 15 in 2017 because Pitt Moyer
Was
was
already combined.
was a combined precinct. And also in talking with the Anne Arundel County State Board of Elections, they feel that given our past numbers and even with a potential increase, they can handle, one polling place can handle 2 precincts, and also put into that mix, if more people do opt for mail-in voting, there'll be fewer people showing up at the polls.
I've been comfortable with the thought of a single location per ward based on the size and the turnout that we have. Yeah, I'm sure that's probably viewed, maybe differently across the cities to, what that means for, for access to folks. I mean, a big difference this year versus prior is that, this is appearing as if it's going to be some form of a hybrid. So, you've got, voting locations plus folks being, provided, and when we get that a part of the conversation anyway, opportunities to vote by mail, plus, the 24-hour, I think, access to the vote boxes. So this might be the opportune time. And as you said, there are a number of these folks in places where we're just not even sure yet if we've got 2 locations in some of the wards. So, I think it's doable. I'm not perhaps as close to the sense of everybody across the city in terms of their feeling towards it, but I think most locations are eminently accessible in each one of the wards.
Mhm. Brianna, your thoughts?
I'd like to see at least one drop box in each ward. I know I was looking at.
Yeah, well, we'll get to
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
think we're probably going to go at least in that direction. And
Okay.
also,
But as
keep
far
in
as
mind-
locations, is that what we're talking about?
well,
as far as
just in terms
locations?
of numbers, and then I'm going to ask Susan to kind of go over where we don't
Oh,
necessarily have to decide the polling places this evening, but if we say we're going to go with 16, we have to keep looking. If we say we're going to go with 8, then I think the next step would be, once the MOU is signed, to have the State Board of Elections do their survey, because they may identify some that are more conducive to handling 2 precincts than others.
And I agree with our older woman out of Ward 3 that it makes sense to have it consistent across the city, that you're either going to do, as you said, it's either 8 or 16. It's not 2 in this ward and 1 in that ward and 2 in this ward. I think
Right.
it's we keep it consistent across each ward.
I go with 8, one in each.
I think 8 will work. I mean, I've done some reading, and it does seem that, I looked at some of the numbers, and when you look at how it's spread out, I'm not quite sure it's increasing access as much as it's spreading out access. If there are some people that feel that they live too far, or they don't have the transportation needs to get there, there is the option of doing an absentee ballot. And then, if we do go with the drop boxes, there's that option also.
And
So I
of
think,
course, Dropbox could be at any one of the locations.
right. So Regina, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I do think that we should have drop boxes, because I feel like eventually in the future, we're going to be using them anyway.
Right.
So,
We'll handle that when we get past how many, because we can't really tell how many we need till we know how we're voting. But how comfortable are you with going to 8? 1 in each ward.
I would not have a problem with 1 in each ward, but I think that, like in Ward 6 where Dewan was, and the Eastport Community Center, and then the other church, the other polling precinct being the church at the other end of the ward.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I think that when Shanika was running, that was an issue. So I'm feeling like they would probably want 2.
Well, I think that there could be a case, we could make a case for 3 in every ward.
Yeah.
If you really start looking at it, and, I'm going to hand this over to Susan in a minute, because I asked her to take the ward maps and plot out where the different locations are. There's certainly not 16 there's certainly not 16 polling locations in the city of Annapolis for a larger election, such as the state or the presidential.
Can I make a suggestion? When the county, during the election, the county, we might select polling precincts, but Dan does it on a regular basis, like you said. So maybe we should ask him what's available when we speak to them on Monday. You know, like what's in the ward, and maybe he'll have a really good polling precinct that's large where we would only need one.
Well, we can certainly ask him. My recollection in 2017 is they were coming to us. And so, you know, and asking us who we wanted to look at. They can look around.
Yeah.
But when we went through the polling locations, I believe it was last month, I think we all felt that there was at least one in every ward that has been consistent. Some wards are lucky. Ward 4 has 2 locations that have been consistently there. But again, going back, I think to Alderman Pendel Charles' point, either everybody gets 1 or everybody gets 2. Now, having said that, Ward 5 has had 1 for at least 2017. I don't recall in 2013.
Well,
so I'm not saying we're going to pick the polling places tonight. I agree with you. Let's talk to Dan and get his feedback, but.
Well, we're going to do whatever you want to do. You guys are the deciders. So it's up to you. If you decide that we only need 1 per ward, that's what we're going to work with.
Okay.
Yeah, my thought was, you know, and I know we're about to talk about it. My thought was, you know, having 1 polling place and then having a drop box in another location for people, but.
Right, that certainly can be, I mean, we certainly had discussed the thought of putting drop boxes where other locations were. The State Board of Elections has encouraged us to keep them in the same place or in close proximity. And I think we also decided that we were going to try to have them placed where we have cameras already in place, or where some make sure that locations are comfortable having them. So that's certainly something, again, when we talk to Dan, finding out which is the most conducive of the options. So Susan, could you go over the status of what polling locations we're still looking at?
You mean as far as the ones that we haven't heard from, or?
Just go through the whole list.
Okay, so our first choices in each ward were in Ward 1, City Hall, and obviously we can have a polling location and a box there. And Ward 2, it would be the Michael E. Bush Annapolis Library there on West Street, and they're open to having both in their locations, being a polling location and a drop box. I see, Regina, you contacted Alderwoman Pendel Charles and asked her to hopefully get in touch with Matt Olive. I may have called them several times. Nobody answers the phone. They don't have email address. So short of like just going over there, I don't know what else to really do. So if there's somebody who has a connection, that would probably be the way to reach the right person. And when I spoke with the American Legion Cook Picnic Post, they were very enthusiastic. They definitely want to be, they're happy to be both a polling location and a drop box location. So they really want to be again, I think that's consistent with past years. And we know the Pitt Moyer Rec Center is available for both. Eastport Community Center, I did follow up, and they're good with both being a polling location and a drop box location. Initially, they were a little bit concerned about the cameras, but that's no longer an issue. And the same goes with the Eastport Library, even though technically I think it's like outside city boundaries, it's right on the edge. And they also are willing to serve as both a polling location and drop box. Same goes for the Eastport Fire Station and Mount Zion United Methodist Church. What did I say about Eastport Fire? Oh, just the contact, but I've talked to them, so they're good. And Mount Zion United Methodist Church, that's Brianna's church, and that was just a third possible option if we didn't have any other options in Ward 8. So that's pretty much it. Then you can look on the sheet, and Maryland Hall is another one I've tried to reach multiple times, and even tried to contact directly a
Dennis?
person that we know there, but his mother passed, and we think maybe that was kind
Yeah.
of why we haven't heard from him. So I think it's just a matter of maybe I need to make more.
Susan, I'll send Dennis an email tomorrow.
Okay.
Because his wife is Jeannie. She works at the fire department. I can call her too.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Calvary United Methodist Church, they're a yes and a yes. And so really with Ward 2, we've got multiple options there for everything. Ward 4, the Heritage Baptist Church was our second option, and they were not as, they were concerned about being a polling location because they have other things going on, and having a polling place there might interfere with things that they also have going on at their church on Tuesdays. But they said they'd definitely be willing to be a Dropbox location. And it's literally right across Forest Drive from the American Legion Post. Eastport United Methodist Church, they're also yes and yes. And I haven't heard back from Fire Company 8 on the Annapolis Neck. They're another one that is just outside the city bounds. I haven't been able to get in touch with somebody, but maybe I just need to keep calling.
Okay.
And the Maritime Museum, as you see, they're willing to be a polling location, but they did not want to have a Dropbox because they have so many public events, and there's not a lot of space like right around, not a lot of parking at the Maritime Museum. So it could be an issue as far as.
Right. However, it is it's city property.
Oh, is it really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
So, well, I mean, this is a good list. You had put together some location options on the, so how about, I mean, it looks like even if we wanted to do 2 in each ward, we may be a little hard pressed to do that. What are your thoughts as far as giving this list to the state board and see if they'll get started on it? The MOU's in its works, but maybe they could go ahead and get started and get us feedback for the next meeting so that we can make the actual determination and get the word out on where people are going to be voting. Because everybody's going to be getting a mailing saying where they're going to be voting.
Are there any? There are only 1 or 2 newbies in this list, right? Most of these have been locations in the past. So, I mean, unless there's something's changed, I mean, I don't think they're going to have an objection
Probably.
necessarily.
Right, but again, we're looking at putting 2 precincts in,
Right.
so that's a different
True
space,
enough. Okay. Right.
space option, which I would be curious if Annapolis Neck Library and the fire station can handle 2 precincts.
Yeah. The fire station, you're talking about the Eastport Fire Station. I mean, that was.
I'm sorry, no, the one out on
Or the-
the Annapolis Neck. one.
Sorry. Yes. Annapolis Neck.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could still decide we're going to do
Yeah.
8, and if those don't work, we have to keep looking. I mean,
Yeah.
Ward 7 has always been a challenge because there's no place that's been identified in Ward 7 that we can use for a polling place. So,
I think our Annapolis Neck one, I think that could probably, just from my experience in going to from the city election in 2017, I think they could probably handle being a double precinct.
right. And again, we're anticipating that actually the in-person may be lower
Yeah.
than what it's been in the past.
Turnout's low in my ward too.
I
So
can tell you in 2017, oops, I had the numbers all here.
I think it was like less than 300 people for a city election. It's real low, even though we have high voter registration.
Right. Ward 7, that's the presidential one. Let me see. Oh, here's the election. The 2017 election, Ward 7 had 959 at the polling place with an additional 28 with provisional voting. So now in the presidential election, for Ward 7. Now, they had different polling place options. In Ward 7, for the presidential election, they had 1,384 voting by absentee, and they had 248 voting in person. So that's even less than what we did in the election. So, as Joe Torre said, you don't want to set up a precinct and then have 20 people. There is also the other element that looking at the number is the ability to recruit election judges. And right now, the cost estimates and the planning, they feel comfortable that 13 election judges at one polling place can handle both precincts. So.
And the cost estimate that we have at this point in time, where is that? That's based on, so the cost estimate right now is based on 16 precincts, 16 polling locations.
Right. No, the cost,
Is
I
it not?
believe, no, the cost estimate,
Or is it just based on one?
cost estimate that we received the other day from them it lists both precincts, but there's staffing for one location.
Okay.
And looking at that, if we go with 8 spots, let me see. I'm looking to see if this is for the primary election. The cost for primary election judges is higher than the general because of training. They include the training in that one. So for the primary election, the cost estimate for it for 8 is 28,700 and I think 60. The letters are so small. So we're looking at 29,000. For the general election,
It's like
the
25.
cost estimate is 25. Now, if we go with 16, that increases because you're going to need more election judges.
Right.
Now, granted, we're not looking at this from the prism of trying to save money. It's really making sure that our resources, particularly in terms of making sure we have adequate election judges, that we do have the resources for accessibility. And, I asked them as far as wait time, they didn't think that was going to make an issue. So any other comments about the number of polling places? Regina, is this something we should make it as a vote? Absolutely. Okay, so can I get a motion that we are planning for 8 polling locations, 1 in each ward, and that we will forward the information to the Anne Arundel County Board of Elections to get feedback on the list that we're giving them. So we're going to give them a list of more than 8, but we want to get feedback to help us make a decision of which. We're not picking the polling places yet. We're just picking the number, but forwarding the information for assistance.
All right, I move that for the Annapolis 2021 elections that we select 8 locations, 1 per ward, as in-person voting locations for the election. And that we provide a recommendation to the county board to assist in the analysis.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So Regina and Susan, if you can forward that information to them. And hopefully if they can get back to us, we'll make a final decision then in May. Gosh, it's all coming so fast. All right, so then the next piece that goes along with that is looking at what are we going to do? Do we want to move forward with our original plan, which was to send out absentee ballots to all registered voters? Knowing that, I'm sorry?
Applications?
applications. That's what they did before. So it was sending, and that's what we decided in December. We would send out absentee ballot applications to all registered voters for them to return if they want an absentee ballot. We can continue with that. We could still go that route, realizing that the State Board of Elections has mentioned time constraint issues and concerns with that. I do want to note that an absentee ballot application is available to download on the city website.
Mhm.
So if somebody wants it, they can just go to the city website. They don't have to ask for it. That means they can download it, fill it out, send it in. So that's an option that's there for all registered voters now. It could be an option that we decide that we're going to promote, or we're going to make people aware that they can do that. I imagine again, people can, and Regina, can people call and ask for an application to be sent to them, or do they have to send it in?
You can call in, if you call us and ask us for an application, we'll mail it to you.
Mhm. I've mailed out a couple.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's done. Yeah, we've mailed some out already.
Okay, so
Excuse me. So, yeah, the verification process isn't at the point of request, it's at the point of receipt when it
Yes.
comes back in. Yeah,
right.
right. And just a clarification on on what the county is saying. Are they saying they're uncomfortable with the time constraints with the mailing of applications, period? Or is it simply the issue of trying to mail out applications between the primary and the general?
I think it's both. I think, it involves more mailings, which one could say maybe isn't necessary, since someone can call and get an application and they can download one from a computer. They could go into the library and download one. They could come into City Hall and pick one up. So it's really it's an additional mailing. Now, if someone downloads it off of their computer and sends it in, then it's verified. So they can mail it, or they could drop it off at City Hall, and then they would receive their ballot later. So that's one way, but it's making sure that everybody, there is a difference between one's voter initiated and one is a passive. Oh, I received an application. Doesn't mean that they're going to fill it out.
Right.
So, for instance, I looked at the numbers for 2017, which is, a different scenario, of course, but I think it was 750 absentee ballot applications were mailed in and ballots were sent out, and about 30% of them were never submitted. So, now, if someone says, someone could fill out their absentee ballot and bring it into an in-person polling place that day also. So there's options in that
Right.
regard. So, the question then is, do we want to go that route? The next one would be, do we want to send out just a ballot to every registered voter? So every registered voter would get one. And then, which is what they did in the presidential elections for the primary. And then if you want to send it back in, you can. If you don't want to send it, you don't have to. And then if you want to just vote in person, you can do that also. Cliff, Brianna, any thoughts?
I just, I agree that, yeah, I mean, today, last election, anybody could certainly, request an absentee ballot. And, given, our last year, there's, absent any discussion about a mail-in ballot process, there's a decent chance we'd have an uptick in people calling and asking for an absentee ballot anyway. But I don't know how that don't know how that gets received. If we did not send out applications.
Well,
If we left it as the status quo, if we left essentially, you know,
the
one
same.
of the options is that, yeah, there are 8 locations. You contact us if you want an absentee ballot application and we'll send it to you. You know, we do have, you know, additional drop boxes that are available, but
Well, I think we're looking
Oh.
at what type of outreach. I mean, we could
Yeah.
say, we send out postcards saying, you know, we want to make sure you know all your options for voting. And that could introduce the drop
Yeah.
boxes and then make sure that people know that they can, where they can get an absentee.
So, you know, let's say that say we take that path and the outreach is famously successful. And we have, you know, not a few hundred or 600 or 700 or so requests. We have 3,000 requests or 4,000 or 5,000 requests for absentee ballots. I mean, it seemed to me that at some level, if, you know, we are indeed enormously successful with that outreach and folks choosing to take that path, we've probably mitigated some of the, oop, is it me with the back? Is that coming from me?
No,
I'm getting a lot of,
no, I don't hear it.
Heard feedback before, but it seems to have faded.
okay. Yeah, at some point, depending upon how many people do that, you're kind of back to, well, we might as well just have mailed them out, you know, in terms of having to deal with, you know, requests that are coming in on a daily basis kind of thing.
Well, there is the advantage if we do send out postcards and do get outreach, people can start applying now. So it doesn't necessarily
True.
have to be a crunch.
True.
It looks like, I mean, it looks like about 10,000 people in the city of Annapolis voted by absentee voting in the presidential general election. Now that's when they got the applications and sent them back in.
Right.
But the difference, because we're, you know, it's really apples and oranges, you know, with when it's on the state level, people could even just download their ballot from we're not going to have that, you know, so they had, you know, that got short circuited. You could even sign up by text. I mean, I applied for my absentee ballot by text. So we can't completely, you know, of the 9,650 people that voted in the city of, no, I take that back. I was looking for my numbers for the general election in 2017. I thought I had it, numbers of people that voted. If we took 80 or 90% of that, I don't think we're going to get more than a couple of thousand. So that can change. But to your point, they say they can handle it. Or that's what they've told me. Brianna, your thoughts?
I don't know. I feel like I've gone back and forth. I feel like given how things are panning out, there's going to be an uptick in applications anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of err on the side of at least mailing them out, but I don't know.
I mean, there's the option of mailing them out, saying the beginning of August and asking them to request for 2 elections. My concern then is if people decide later they want an application. I think it's important to keep it as simple as possible. And my concern with making a transition with things going on with COVID and all that, if we make it too complicated between, you know, reducing polling locations, adding drop boxes, doing all this, I'm a little concerned it can be confusing. And if people get confused, they tend maybe just to walk away.
So yeah, if they're mailed out and it's, you know, this is not an option, you know, this is not check the box. If you respond, you are voting. You're asking for a ballot for both the primary and the general.
You're asking for an application.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, but
Yeah.
by doing this and saying you're going to be mailed a ballot then for, but this is a request that is effective for both the primary and the general. And it's squarely put on, on those, on the application when you get it, this is what you're doing.
I just want to clarify though. So if we're sending out applications, we're sending out 12,000 applications. That's a mailing, including
Mhm.
postage and staff work. We're sending out 12,000 applications that we don't know how many, then those people have to get them back in a timely manner to the state board. Actually, they have to get them to the city hall, and then we have to get them up to Glen Burnie. They have to be verified.
Mhm.
Then when they're verified, then they send the ballot to the voter, and then the voter sends the ballot in. So it's a 4 mailing procedure. If we do outreach and encourage people, and many people now, know how to do absentee ballots because they've done it more so, they can download it, call, and get the application themselves and send it in and then get the ballot. So you're really cutting down, instead of 4 mailings, 2 mailings.
So to expound on your point there, that so if indeed, we've got 12,000 people that we've mailed this out, the applications in a way, but if a significant number of them mail these things back, if they walk into, they kind of forget, they get confused, they walk into a voting location on that primary day, or they walk into a voting location on the day of the general. If I recall correctly, please, we're going to look in there. It's going to be a provisional vote at that point, is it not? If that happens,
But they could also decide to bring if they have a
they
ballot,
could.
they
Yep.
could walk in with their ballot.
Right.
And if they haven't voted, if you live in Ward 5 and you maybe lost your ballot and you walk into Ward 5 and they say you signed up for
Right.
a absentee
Mhm.
ballot and one was sent to you,
Yep.
they could vote provisionally.
Right.
They could say, I lost it or I never got it, because that's the other concern
Yeah.
people get with
Yeah.
the mail. I didn't
Yeah.
get it. But they could still vote provisionally. Now we have to make sure that they vote in their ward, because if you live in Ward 5 and you walk over, you work in
Yeah.
Ward 6, you can't.
And that
get.
touches on
But
it.
but that's every election.
Yeah.
So just to kind of rephrase, what we're talking about with this is just to keep it the way it is, essentially, which is if people want an absentee ballot, they ask for it. And we have those procedures in place. Or we send out an application, we send everybody an application for an absentee ballot, which requires 4 mailings, plus additional mailings for letting people know.
Right. So,
And then the mail-in would be to send out the ballots.
all right. So then just to flush this out entirely. So given the environment we have today, if indeed we do this, let's say that we decide not to do that, and we decide, you know what, we're going to do a lot of outreach. We're going to say you can call, they're available, everywhere we can, so you can request these absentee ballots. We're going to have drop boxes that are available before the day of election, so we have a form of early voting in that regard, right? Because the drop boxes will be available other than just the day of election. I don't know if we've decided how long they'd be available beforehand. So there's an expansion of opportunity, in that regard. But we're going to have a reduction in terms of 2 precincts or 2 locations down to 1 per precinct, with the exception of PIP, which has been available for 2 precincts for a while. I don't want to make a decision based on any groupthink in that sense, but given the environment we hear for other things that occurred in other states, does this create any sense of, hey, you guys I can't believe you're taking away my opportunities? Is there anything of that sort that we're talking about here?
Well, we're not taking away their opportunity. I mean, either we're keeping it the same or we're adding additional mailings. So Brianna, what were your thoughts?
I hadn't added anything to it. I just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with, as we're talking that we are much more aggressive than we've been in the past. We're
Yeah.
trying to find ways to, hey, these things are available. It's not hard to get an absentee ballot. And that's the approach that we have then for 2021.
I mean, we have talked with Mitchell
Yep.
about getting the word
Yep.
out.
Yep.
I don't know if we've ever, Regina, has there ever been any signage with elections, like around town saying, hey, remember, if you want an absentee ballot,
Oh,
you know?
a couple elections ago, we put, we had the city put a request on water bills.
Oh, that's
That
interesting.
was a long time ago. Like when I first kind of started doing this, we had a note on the water bill that there, don't forget to vote.
Mhm.
I think there are a lot of those.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
you
it
know.
usually falls onto the candidates to
To
do it,
notify
pretty sure.
people.
Well,
Yeah.
and I
But-
think that's a good point, Brianna. The candidates can also be assisting with this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I do remember, if Eileen, you recall, Arnold was a fan 4 years ago in terms of the board taking a more aggressive approach in terms of assisting turnout. We've kind of said this has been the candidate's role from a turnout perspective. But maybe this time we, between the water bills, and there are certainly plenty of other
Right.
public places, the libraries, grocery stores, where we could.
Well, we
make
made it one of
easily
our
known.
priorities, and then
Yep.
something called COVID interfered.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can certainly enlist the aldermen,
Yep.
and most of them will be running, but at least, get some of that
Right.
information out.
I think it'd be worth it. I mean, I'm okay with that. I think if with us kind of taking a more aggressive approach about it, I think I feel like it provides a little bit of that like return to normalcy, but also that allowing for people to have that space for hesitation, to kind of just go back, full force into a voting location. So, I mean, and that's something I can work with some other community people and stuff too, to get that out there.
I
So,
think that's
mean,
an
I'm-
interesting point, Brianna, the concept of, somewhat normalcy and not maybe doing too much. So if I'm hearing correctly, I think we're kind of all tending towards agreement to just leave the absentee ballot process as it is so that voters can request it, and that we will take actions towards promoting or outreach to let people know the various ways that they can get absentee ballots. And that can be through either water bills or postcards, reminding people when we send out the ballots, and just getting the word out. Am I hearing correctly?
I think so. I had a question though. When it comes to, I know Susan and Regina were saying they had already sent some out already in the ways that they can send them out. Do you all also email ballot applications to people? Has anyone ever asked for that, or are you all able to do that?
I'm pretty sure we could email that.
Because I mean, it's since it's downloadable from the website, but I mean, if people may have some sort of aversion to maneuvering the website, which I can't blame them for, but just to have it directly sent, if that was an option.
That would probably be good because we had proof we sent it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. And it's no,
Fees
like, what's it called? No reason, or like
Right, it's no reason.
no reason application. Okay, yeah,
We changed that the last time.
yeah. So
All right, so if I'm hearing correctly, can I have a motion? Well, maybe I don't need a motion. We're just going to do what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're good. Next.
as I say, do we need a motion to like kind of, or I guess that would come maybe at another meeting and
Can you
figuring out
clarify it,
the
Regina?
cost of kind of a campaign of making sure people know about
Yeah, we can
requesting
work,
ballot.
we can work that out.
Yeah,
Um,
and she would help.
A motion would help?
No, Mitchell.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure she'll
She
help.
said she would help get the word out.
Right. So if we're going to continue with absentee ballots the way we're doing it, so technically we're not increasing a vote by mail. We're not really adopting a vote by mail option at this point. We're just going to have the 8 polling places, and absentee ballot applications will be available as they have been in 2017.
Okay.
And no ballots will be mailed out unless they're requested.
Yep.
Okay.
So, well, I guess I'm getting ahead. So and then still having drop boxes or not having
Well,
drop boxes?
that's the next
That's
That's the
question.
next thing? Okay, sorry.
So to me, because when I started thinking of all these permutations, I was like, my head was filling. And I started thinking, well, the drop boxes really have, they really address the delivery method back. And so a lot of people are concerned about the mail. It could be it could be a number of reasons in terms of security. And so really addressing the security, people seem to like having the drop boxes. They seem to, they just seem to like it. So, or at least that's the feedback I'm getting personally. So the question would be, we are anticipating, even though we're not going to send applications out, we are anticipating there's going to be more people voting by absentee ballot this year. And so would drop boxes benefit that and just benefit people in general? And so we just have to decide, are we going to use them and how many do we think we need?
I think, borrowing a little bit on the prior conversations where it snuck in, that, if we can do 1 location per ward, I think that is a nice counterbalance to some of the other things we talked about. It sounded as if there was accessibility for each ward looking at the map that Susan had, it looked like there was availability. Wasn't quite sure if that availability meant 24-hour or meant certain limited hours at each site.
Regina?
He just asked my question. So if you have a polling precinct, the polling precinct is open on election day.
Correct.
If you have a drop box there, then they could put ballots in depending on when the board decided to have the box placed.
Right.
And
Correct.
after the election.
Well, the recommendation is that
30
now,
days?
let's look at the big picture with drop boxes, because it's not as simple as just having a drop box.
Right.
So when we say we're having a drop box, it's renting a drop box, putting it in a place where either the city, where the city already has cameras or can put cameras, and then it's monitored for 24/7. The recommendation is to put it out 30 days before the primary.
Mhm.
And since our primary and general are so close together, they recommend we just leave them there.
Mhm.
And then they will be locked at 8 o'clock on
Election night.
election night. And then they'll be picked up either the next day or shortly thereafter.
So would it be possible to have, if we're going to have the drop boxes, have one in front of each polling place if there's a camera that can cover it?
Okay, well, I'm kind of taking from the perspective, what are the needs of the voters and what are do we need 8 boxes?
I mean,
Do we need
if
one in
you
every
just
ward?
think about it, if it was a week before the election, you had your ballot in your car, the polling place isn't open, but the box is there.
Right, but do we need 8 of them in the city of Annapolis? There were 2, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit. There were 2
Where
for the
would they go?
presidential election. There was one at Bates and there was one at Pip Moyer. Because also what goes along with this is then there's a 2-person group courier that comes down. They were doing it twice a day. So we can talk with them whether
That's
we want to
true.
do it once a day or twice a day. So then you're talking about having somebody come down.
8 places.
Now with a drop box, you can put your ballot in any drop box. It doesn't have to be for your ward.
Right.
Right.
It could be anywhere. So again, I'm looking at accessibility, but also kind of practicality also in terms of how many do we need? I mean, I don't think we need none. I mean, we talked about, I was looking at the ward maps and thinking, at first we talked about Pitt Moyer and City Hall, and then I thought, well, maybe the library would access more people along West Street. If we felt that we needed it to go out more towards Ward 7 or the outer part of Ward 6, then we're getting into the issue of putting it in a place that's not a polling place. And that can have, different issues. So it's not, it's easy to say we need 8 boxes, but do we really need 8 boxes? And is that where we want to direct kind of some of our monies as opposed to other doing outreach? In fact, actually it dawned on me, if we had some drop boxes, we could put the information for the absentee ballots on the drop box.
Because they said we would have to cover them because it has the county information on them.
Right, so we'll have to get new signage for it.
So then if you have to spend money for drop boxes to rent them and to cover them, I would say too, it could get expensive.
Did they have that cost in? I remember there was some conversation about what it cost for the rental.
They did. It's in the cost estimate. I'm looking for it now.
It's not the right column. It's not the one I want.
Too many papers.
I know. I got files up here somewhere. Where is it? There it is.
Here I have the election.
There it is, Dropbox rental fee. So 1,800 projected. Delivery and pickup 2,800 for 2. Or
And
2,080 for 2 drop boxes delivered and picked up.
And
Wait.
they didn't put the courier cost in there. That was one of the things that I picked up and asked them to put in.
Wouldn't the 90-day window drop as well? Or what am I?
Sorry, which 90-day?
Assumes 90-day drop boxes rental rate. Underneath.
I think it's almost 90 days if you were to put it in 30 days before
the
you were to
primary.
put it in like August 20th, and then they stayed until November
Oh, okay. Yeah.
3rd. So it's that, I asked the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And we said that since most of the places we're looking at, we already had cameras, so that's why there's no cost on the camera line.
Correct.
Yeah.
So again, it kind of has the same
It's
way
$3,800
of
bucks.
analyzing it as we talk about the polling places. What allows, accessibility, across the board.
I feel like if we're gonna drop to just one precinct, one location with the kind of money saved aspect of that, it's worth having a drop box in another location separate from it. But when I think about accessibility in some of these places, as far as like mass transit and like walkability goes,
That's why I was thinking maybe a third one at the library might be worthwhile.
a third box.
Yeah, do one at City Hall, one at Pitt Moyer, and one at Bush Library.
Mm.
Trying to hit,
Would we-
3/4,
But would it be helpful to have one that's I don't know, at the the Eastport Fire Station or something of that sort that covers that area of the territory?
Because I'm thinking like if we're thinking like with Ward 8, if we're gonna have it at the like Eastport United Methodist or the fire station, it'd be worth it to have a drop box down by like the Maritime Museum or Mount Zion. Because at like the other end and that kind of thing.
right, but I think we have to look at accessibility. I mean, the Maritime Museum's already said they won't have one.
Right.
And, drop boxes are helpful when you're looking at transportation and walkability. And again, if you look at the city map and trying to kind of triangulate a different area, I think it's, I mean, we don't have to give a final answer on that tonight. I personally am in favor of, say, 3. I think that the experience with the, again, it's apples and oranges with the 2020 presidential. They had 2. And they had a very good feedback across the board with all of the wards. We could talk about the placement later once we do the polling locations, but I think that 8, I think 8 is more than perhaps is needed. And people can still mail them. They can mail them. They can drop them off at City Hall. They could either walk them into City Hall. And again, they can mail them. This is really a option for people who don't want to send it, don't want to mail it.
Yeah, I just feel like I just think of there's some stuff when it comes, some barriers when it comes to lower income folks that I feel like is getting overlooked as far as, who just has time to go to the USPS and buy a book of stamps, who has a need to buy a book of stamps and mail it back. And those same kind of people that those are the same kind of people that don't always work 9 to 5s. As far as being able to drop it off at City Hall. And so I'm thinking of that kind of thing, and that leaves out a lot of people. If we're going to talk about accessibility.
Well, I hear what you're saying. It's just that, then we get ourselves into the point of trying to look at every different configuration for everything.
Not even necessarily that. I think we're assuming some semblance of socioeconomic status and some privileges that come along with that. And I just feel like that's being overlooked just because of how the city in general does it. There's the way people are siphoned off get overlooked, just the way they are siphoned off. I mean, I'm fine with, not having the 8, but I think 4 would be fine, especially if you're talking about having 3. Although part of that's just because I have to think about odd numbers. But I think it'd be nice to have at least one more that's closer to when you think about mass transit and walkability, that it could be that somewhere else it could be. But that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, would some place like the Eastport Fire Station meet that need, do you think? I mean, I do worry about, I'm sensitive to what Alderman Gay was concerned about down by Bay Ridge Gardens. But I'm not sure that there's any place down closer to there other than the fire station, which I'm not sure is going to be helpful.
The library.
The Eastport.
People walk to that shopping center all the time.
Yeah, the Eastport Library.
And the library is right at that shopping center, and people walk over there all the time.
But we used to use the other church. What was Mount Moriah?
Yeah.
You just leave a box at Mount Moriah. You don't have to use it as a polling precinct. And
but the State Board of Elections really kind of waved us off from going to places other than polling places, mostly for security.
Oh, but yeah. But you do have, like, in the majority of that end of the city, people don't have cars, that they ride the bus.
Right. But you're saying people would walk to Eastport. There is transportation that runs West Street, which would be Bush Library. And then Pitt Moyer, I don't know what the bus situation is over there.
The stop's kind of far. I mean, it's walkable, but the stop's kind of far.
Right. On the other hand, a lot of people use Pitt Moyer, just working out and all. Well, again, we don't have to make a final decision tonight, but if we move towards thinking a little bit more about it. So if we're going to 4, we're talking right now about maybe Eastport Library, Bush Library, Pitt Moyer, and City Hall. And so when we ask Dan to do the surveys of the polling places, we'll ask him also to assess the camera situation and the security situation. How does that sound? A lot of it also is placement. We might want to make sure they'll let us place it where we think it will work.
And it looked like, yeah, because it looked like we had, tentative yeses on boxes at a variety of
Yeah.
those locations. So yeah, where we put it, if that's probably didn't get to like, this is where it's going to go if you actually have it here. Be sure that that works.
Okay, I know it's getting late, so
No, it's a good discussion. I think there's some money with these. It's not horribly expensive, and I think to balance off a lot of the other things we're talking about, that if it means we have another Dropbox, and we have another Dropbox.
right, and we'll get the information. We've requested the information on the courier service.
Okay.
That will entail with that,
Right.
so.
Because
And
they
I feel
are
like that. I feel like
every
we
day.
wouldn't need a twice a day thing, but I feel like we could probably just do one
Mhm.
Yeah, I do-
once a day.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that they come and check our PO box every day,
Once a day. Mhm.
right,
once a day. So I think could combine that trip.
right,
Yeah.
right. All right, well, that would be a question. All right, so we haven't made a final decision on that, but we had a good discussion, and we'll get more information from a survey and get some feedback from Dan at State Board of Elections. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I've lost my agenda. Oh, no, here it is. So Susan, we kind of cut into you a little bit. Do you have anything in particular more to add as far as polling and Dropbox locations?
No, not really. I have my action item to forward this information to the county and ask for their feedback. And so,
Okay. Now, Regina, I have a question for you. Since at the work session, at that point, we were expecting that we were going to be sending out absentee ballots to everyone.
Mhm.
How do you think it should be handled in terms of communicating the change that we're going to stick with what we've done before? Wait until it's all kind of completed and then send out an email?
Maybe, yeah. We
Okay.
could send, yes. I think that
Okay.
would be best. Because the city council will be meeting Monday through Thursday for the next couple of weeks. Because
Right.
they're working on their budget, so.
Okay,
And they have extra work sessions scheduled, so trying to get on a work session schedule, it probably won't be until the end of July.
okay. Well, and it's really a communication thing as much as anything, and I think it'll be easier. I think if we were going to mailing out all the ballots, that would be a bigger change that would warrant some more discussion.
I agree.
Hey,
Okay.
Eileen,
Mhm.
just one last thought before we leave this topic, and it may be just something for our next session. But given the increase in ballots that could well be received that are mailed, whether or not for this election it would make sense to have those tabulated at a time other than a week after at the canvas.
I'm sorry, say that again.
As a discussion item for our next meeting on the topic of the receipt of absentee ballots.
Right.
Whether or not we would need to consider, the possibility of looking at these on the day of election rather than a week later at the canvas.
Well, they can they can start being tabulated. They can be opened.
That's what, it's because absentee ballots.
You're thinking of provisional. It's the
I'm
provisional
sorry.
ballots,
I am
yeah.
thinking of, I just want to be careful that, ballots that come in after election, we're dealing with at the canvas. Ballots that are coming in prior to the day of election are getting tabulated on the day of election. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Right.
Yep.
Now, one other thing, just to along with that Ashley is looking at, and I think we brought up last month, was the idea of curing ballots, because the state says that we cannot open a ballot, not the state, the city code says we can't open a ballot until the polls close.
Mhm.
What has been done, a new thing that has been being done at the state level, is opening up the privacy panel when absentee ballots are sent in, opening up the privacy ballot. I'm sorry. When the absentee ballot is sent in, they open up the privacy flap to see if it's been signed. And if it's not signed, they contact the voter about signing it. That's called curing. So the question I had asked Ashley to look into, is that considered opening a ballot? So once we get kind of a legal opinion from her, unless she wants to chime in now about it, we can kind of wait on that. But that was something the state board asked.
I think you could do that. I don't think lifting up the privacy panel counts as opening the ballot envelope. At least legally, that's when you read the whole section in the city code, they're talking about opening it and looking at the actual ballot and doing what you need to do with it. I don't think lifting up just the privacy panel to see if there's a signature constitutes opening under our code. At least that's my legal thought.
Well, and one of the questions I would have for Joe and David is explain to us a little more detail what the process is. It's how are people, how are people notified? Who's going to be responsible for following up? So.
Yeah, and I said if we're going to allow that, that is something I might want to add into the MOU, because I want to make sure we're very clear about what we are doing, what they can do, and what they can't do as a cure, so that there's no gray zone where they sort of drift into an uncomfortable place for us.
Okay. All right, so we'll get some more information on that. All right, Susan, anything you want to add to the polling locations or?
Nope.
Okay. I think that's it on that. Anything else, anybody?
Absolutely.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is the ballot question. Some follow-up. Do you want to follow up with that now, or should we put it on the May agenda?
I think it'll still be, I think, coming back for the May agenda at this point. Again, we talked about this last month, and Ashley did take a look at, a couple of the sections of the code. So, for the most part, many of the items we're talking about would indeed fall under the city code and not just default to the state. But, what needs to happen yet is just a clear listing of what that means for any of the issues that happen, that the state has the procedural guidelines for ballot questions that come their way. And that I think I just need to write those down, unless Ashley has time to do it, to summarize, what this mean, what each one of these procedural steps mean as far as the city. What are the number of days? How many? What are the number of signatures that need to be obtained based on the prior election in 2017 or whatever? So it's just very clear what each one of those items would be in the event of a ballot question request. We've had one which we clearly said doesn't apply for the city, but should we receive something that would apply to the city? So that's still an outstanding item.
Okay, so we'll follow up in May. And then the next item is a campaign question that came in that I think you all are familiar with, asking about campaign asked if they could use a video that was being provided to them that was an endorsement for the candidate. And if so, did they need to put an authority line, or what needed to be done? So I know we had gotten some information and kind of put in some options. And then I talked to Jared DeMoranis at the state to get his feedback, and also talked with Ashley. And Ashley, do you want to take it from here? You want me to just kind of tell them I think everybody knows what the bottom line was.
Yeah, so the bottom line was that even though the campaign itself didn't create the video or expend any funds on it, because they were receiving it, it was essentially an in-kind contribution. And because they'd be using it going forward, that they needed to both report it as an in-kind contribution, and they needed to put an authority line on it, because ultimately they would be using it as part of their campaign process. And then we were reminded to work on our independent expenditure legislation as well.
Right, because technically this would have fallen under that category.
Correct. And speaking of which, not to jump ahead, but I did send an email into Jared. I'm going to try to work through some of the issues with him on the side and get back to you guys, but he's currently on vacation. So I will follow up once he is back from vacation.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that that campaign was already notified of the status and they were fine. So it's nice that the campaigns are contacting us. So that kind of hits on independent expenditures, legislative update. I did, just along that lines with the independent expenditures, I did get some feedback from Alderman Savage with the preliminary information we had reviewed earlier, and he said it was along what he was thinking. So he was looking forward to receiving some more down the line. Any election related bills that ended up finishing up, Brianna?
Just one.
Just one after
And it
started with
really
like 20?
doesn't impact us, honestly, for the most part. It has to do with early voting centers and their hours of operation. So early voting locations just have to be open between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. during each early voting day. And that's the only one that really kind of made it through. The other one that I was tracking had to do with correctional facilities. So as far as people who's been released from a correctional facility and just the notification of their rights being restored and their eligibility to vote and everything. But those are really the only two that made it through. Everything else kind of just got stalled.
All right. Well, thank you for tracking that. Actually, that reminded me of something and kind of goes along with your point, Brianna, about identifying groups of people that we really need to be making sure we have accessibility. And I know that the county had been working on outreach also to people in nursing homes and in some of the senior living buildings too. I'm thinking of like Bloom and some of those other areas. So that's something to think about also along with in that vein. Would it be helpful? I know I'm backtracking a little bit. Would it be helpful for us to look at the transportation system and how it may overlay with some of these polling places that we're looking at, and where we might decide to where to put the drop boxes?
Definitely.
Okay. Is that something you could do,
Yeah.
Susan? Okay, because I know Susan plotted where we're looking at polling places on the map, and I found that helpful in looking at kind of helping decide where we want to be.
Yeah, and I know, at least from when I used to actively use it, and from some of the people I know that still actively use it, the brown line and the red line really hit kind of the main, or the kind of most common ones people use.
Okay, Regina?
How about we send the maps that Susan created over to Kwaku, because he's going to be acting transportation director, and he can, update her maps with the routes.
That sounds great.
But
Maybe we should be putting signage in the buses.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And they can put it on the side of the bus. The bus travels all over the city.
They might charge us for that.
Need an absentee ballot.
Well, can you find out if that's
City
even a
Hall.
possibility?
You know what? I'll ask the mayor.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great idea because, if you put them on the buses,
they travel
everybody
around
can
the
see
city
them.
all day long, free.
I know when I'm sitting in my car, I read the sides of
Me too, because the bus is always cutting me off.
And those cars that have the wrap
on
advertisements.
Well, we can wrap Cliff's car, Brianna's car, and Eileen's car.
I say we wrap it. We get Cliff's bicycle.
Yeah.
he can do it when he's exercising.
Tinted windows, so it might be a little hard.
He can have a flag on his bicycle.
All right, we're getting giddy now. All right, I realized also that I skipped your report on the city elections office, Susan. I apologize. Is there any update you want to give us?
No, I thought I thought I reported that there really wasn't anything. I do have one question. I'm sorry. With regard to the acknowledgement form that we've been asking the candidate and treasurer to sign and send back, how hard do you want me to press for that?
Remind me what that is.
What is for the binder, right?
That's that they received the acknowledging that they received the candidate handbook.
Oh, if you give it to them in their packet, then they received it. Make them sign it before when they pick up their packet.
Well, no, this is mailed out after we've certified them. So it gets mailed to them.
Well, why don't you just email it?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
I email it. I contact him. I say, take a picture, just tell me yay, nay. I get.
Yes, sir. Say they
nothing.
could. I think I sent an email back and
Say, I received it.
yeah, I've
Yeah,
received
that's-
received
I've
and
been-
reviewed.
I don't even get that. I've been
Oh.
even asking for that.
So
And
I would
it's
try
complicated.
I would try phoning them.
Okay,
I mean, if
Okay.
email's not working, try something else.
okay.
Please know it is required you respond.
That's right.
Okay.
All right. Also just for the election office, I did send an email to Mike Lyles asking what the update was as far as where the election office was going to be. And I don't think anything's definite yet, but kind of keep bringing it up and reminding him that it needs to be a secure location that has accessibility for people to get in and out. So we'll see. All right, anything else? Brianna, Cliff, Regina, Ashley, Susan?
No, ma'am.
No.
So we will be meeting with the state board on Monday. Regina, Ashley, and myself, and we'll get a report back to you all. If you think of any particular things you want us to ask, shoot them to us over the weekend. We're meeting with them at 10 o'clock on Monday. So if you have anything, let us know and we'll bring it up. Anything else?
Put that on my calendar.
All right, well, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.